Good morning, guys, or good afternoon, whether you're joining me from the present or the future. Welcome back to another FutureFight Vanguard video. Happy July 1st. This is the month of my birthday, so birthday month hype. This is also the month in which I started both of my platforms. So Let's Plays Animes and Cardfight Empire, it is also there. Or my channels, it's weird referring to them in the third person, but it is also my channel's birthdays this month. So this is a cool month all around. There will be a lot of kind of bigger changes coming in because I think that I'll be buying like computers. So all my problems that I'm having with my MacBook Pro and recording videos, the same problems that I've always had because it's way harder to use a MacBook Pro and try to do Windows things. The same problems that I've been having for that will hopefully disappear. So hopefully it'll be like a content upgrade, more consistent content because I won't be having those problems anymore. And yeah, just a whole bunch of good stuff going into July. So new month, new me. Not really, same me. Same Cardfight Empire. But we are going to continue our FutureFight series today. So we're going to load up our deck here. We're going to be talking about the last deck in V-EB13, the Astral Force. So it's the Chronofang Gear Chronicle deck. And you guys will also be getting a double feature today, which means that at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, you guys will be getting a double drop video of both the Chronofang deck, but also the Chrono Jet deck that comes out in the next set as well. So definitely, if you're on this video and you haven't checked out the Chrono Jet deck, definitely go check out that future fight after this one. But we're gonna get right into it here. If you guys haven't already, be sure to subscribe down below, comment down below, and like the video, letting me know that you like it. Also, be sure to click the bell button next to the subscribe button so that you get notifications for whenever we go live. Also, be sure to check out the join button if you guys are interested in channel membership. Also, be sure to check out our social medias down in the description below, and check out our second channel, Let's Plays Animes, if you guys are interested in anime, animation, or video games. But with that being said, let's get right into the video here. So we're gonna go ahead and go into our Chronofang Tiger deck list. So this is a really cool deck. It's personally not really my play style, not really a deck that I personally have fun with, but I can see how it could be fun for other people. So let's go right over the deck. So first off, we're having some grade 4s that we're starting off with, which is Gear Chronicles, kind of their gimp, if you will, or they're a mechanic. They also have grade 4s that they go into directly from the main deck. Now, other decks are starting to get grade 4s as well, but Gear Chronicle is special because they grab the grade 4 straight from the deck and they go right into it. So it's kind of like Stride for them, and since Gear Chronicle originally came around in Stride format, then this is a very fitting mechanic for them to have in Standard going forward. Considering that they're not trying to make Stride in Standard, at least right now. So very, very cool mechanic. So I also want to talk about the Force. So you can go Force 1 or Force 2 in this Chrono Tiger build. It really just depends on what your opponent's doing. Personally, I rely on going Force 1 in this deck because I like how the power stacks up with them being unable to guard with the Chrono Tiger Rebellion 3rd skill. So yeah, so I think more power is good in this case, but I've also seen people run Force 2 in these builds and be very successful with that as well. So definitely just try out both variants of what you want to do and decide which one works for you. But let's get right into the list here. So we have 4 Chrono Tiger Rebellion. This is our only grade 4 in the deck. We go into it directly from Chronofang Tiger or Lost Legend, which will summon it to the Vanguard circle or basically Superior Ride it. So basically it has a Vanguard ability that says when it attacks, you activate all the effects below according to the number of cards in your hand. If you have 5 or less cards in your hand when activating this card skill, then you choose 2 of your opponent's front row rear guards and retire them. If you have 3 or less, 3 of your front row units get plus 10,000 power until the end of the turn. And then if you have 1 or less, you can pay the cost to turn all the cards in your damage zone face down. And then this unit gets a continuous Vanguard ability that says all your opponent's guardians get minus 5,000 shield until the end of the turn. So Chrono Tiger Rebellion is like a really cool finisher card in combination with the on stride or on place skill of Chronofang Tiger. So basically it gives it like a plus drive and a plus crit, which makes this card super threatening if you get down to like, you know, get your hand down to like 1 card in hand. You also have a lot of replenishing mechanics in this deck, so when you do put yourself down in hand advantage, you basically will go back up after your drive checks and your skills. So Not impossible to guard with, but I do think that you should hold off on going down to 1. Like, you should not force yourself down to 1 unless you absolutely have to. So I pretty much use Chrono Tiger Rebellion skill when I get to that stage in the game, and I don't just try to rush it. I have seen people rush it, and it does like fail for them because you're, you know, losing too much advantage too quickly trying to force it, and it ends up not working out for you. But you retired 2 rear guards, so that's strong. Whether you're, you know, fighting a Force, Protect, or an Excel deck. Obviously, in Excel, that doesn't just clear out their front row, but in Protect and Force, that straight up clears out their front row and any chances of intercept that they might have had if they're intercepting from the front row. And then the 3 front row units given plus 10,000 power really just makes the 3rd ability more crucial as well, which is when all your opponent's Guardians get minus 5,000 shield, that turns their grade 1 10Ks into 5K shields. It turns their grade 2 5K shields into 0K shields, so they can no longer guard effectively with grade 2s. And then their triggers makes them all minus 5 as well, so your crits will be 10,000 shield, their heals will be 15,000 shield, so it gets really hard to block attacks if you don't have a PG. The PGs are the real only way around this card's ability. And then even then you have to deal with the rear guards as well, which some of them have guard restrict. So that is important to note as well. So moving into our next grade 3, we have 4 Chronofang Tiger. Chronofang Tiger has 2 abilities as well. The first ability of Chronofang Tiger is the regular one that most of the Gear Chronicle grade 3s have, which is discard 1 or more cards from your hand with the sum of their grades being grade 3 or greater. Basically, you can discard any card or number of cards from your hand as long as they equal up to grade 3 or surpass grade 3 in amount. And then you can search your deck for up to 1 grade 4, which in this case would be Chrono Tiger Rebellion. And then you write it as stand, shuffle your deck, and then at the end of the turn, retire that unit and write a grade 3 from your Soulless Rest. So this is awesome because you don't have to worry about drawing your Chronofang Tiger, or your Chrono Tiger Rebellion. I don't know why I was saying Chronofang Tiger Rebellion, but you don't have to worry about drawing your Chrono Tiger Rebellion because you can just search it out straight from the deck with Chronofang Tiger or Lost Legend. However, it is better to do it using Chronofang Tiger, which is why we run 4 and we run 1 Lost Legend, because it gets an additional ability when you're doing the when you're going into Rebellion. So basically, when rode upon by Chrono Tiger Rebellion, you can discard a card from your hand, and your Vanguard, which would be Chrono Tiger Rebellion at that point, gets +1 critical and +1 drive. So you get triple drive like a real Stride would, and then you also get +1 critical, so 2 crit. Very threatening on top of all the other skills that Chrono Tiger Rebellion has. Can really be a finisher and a really hard thing for your opponent to deal with. Also, something to be noted as well, if you know this if you play Gear Chronicle, but if you never played Gear Chronicle or you never played against it, you should know that at the end of your turn, when you ride from the soul, you ride a grade 3 unit from your soul, and then you do get a force marker. So you're essentially getting 2 force markers in 1 turn, which is you know, pretty solid, especially if you're rewriting multiple turns and stuff like that. You can start getting more force markers than, you know, your opponent, unless they're really playing like Mordred or something like that. Moving on to our second grade 3 in the deck, like I said before, we have 1 Lost Legend. Pretty much has the same exact first skill as Chronofang Tiger, but then its second skill is when rode upon, you counterblast 2, and then you can draw a card. So definitely, I would say not as useful in this deck as, you know, Chronofang Tiger, especially because you're discarding a card with this one, and you're drawing a card with this one, which you don't really want to do if you want to make full use out of Chronofang Tiger, or part use, like drawing cards doesn't really help you. Unless you're drawing cards post attack of Chrono Tiger Rebellion. So definitely just keep out for that. But we definitely do just run a 1 of, just because we don't want to just have 4 grade 3s in case we get like grade locked and we can't find that grade 3. It gives us an additional chance to get a grade 3 that we would rather ride than G-Assist. Moving on to our grade 2s, we have 4 Chrono Bite Tiger to start off with. It has 2 abilities. The first one is a Vanguard only ability that says at the beginning of your ride phase, draw a card and discard a card. So this card is actually just looks like a draw 1, drop 1, but it's actually so much more, because you have abilities in this deck that when discarded, they do certain things, or this just really helps you filter out. It also does it at the beginning of ride phase, so if you haven't found a Chronofang Tiger, you can just literally draw a card at the beginning of your ride phase from this, and hopefully that card's Chronofang, and then you can discard any other card that you didn't want. In this case, if you discard Chrono 2 Tigger with any of your discard abilities, you're getting additional pluses and draw from that, so very, very good. Its secondary ability is when it's on the rearguard circle, once per turn, you can discard a card from your hand. Again, just having a cost that fulfills to having less cards in your hand. And then this unit gets +1 critical until the end of the turn. So definitely goes in like plus critical again. So if you're on Force 2 and you have a Force 2 circle, this card becomes 3 crit, and it becomes something that your opponent has to guard. So it becomes like sort of big with Chronofang Tiger Rebellion, and then you can have like Force markers and all that stuff. So that's why I said that going Force 1 is ideal for me, because I think that the additional power really like puts a oomph to your opponent and makes them start guarding things, which makes guarding harder because of Chrono Tiger Rebellion. Moving into our next grade 2, we have 4 Steam Skara Ikalbu. Ikalbu is really good on our grade 2 rush turn and all the turns thereafter, but also just very, very good on our grade 2 rush turn in my opinion. So it has 2 abilities. The first one is Vanguard Rearguard, once per turn. During your main phase, you can counterblast 1 and discard a card, and then one of your Vanguards get +1 drive. This is a perfect addition to this deck, because it is a card that is substantiated by what I'm saying before. So if you have a card that pluses your hand or pluses your hand size like post battle, then that's very, very good, or post attack. So basically everything that happens like past the moment of Chrono Tiger Rebellion attacking, like hinge drive checks, abilities, all that stuff that draws cards, all those are amazing. But if you have to discard it, or sorry, if you have to draw any card before you would do that, it's not as amazing, because you basically, you know, are increasing your hand size when you want to decrease your hand size. And then its second ability of Ikalbu is when it's in the hand, it works as a continuous skill. This card would be discarded. It can be discarded as a grade 3. So you can basically discard this card and Wedge Move Dragon as grade 3s, so that you don't have to discard your actual grade 3s and you can just ride them if you'd like to. Moving on to our last grade 2 in the deck, we have 4 Steam Mechanic Nabu. Nabu is a pretty staple card in most Gear Chronicle builds, just because its ability is so good. But when it's on the rearguard circle and it attacks a Vanguard, you can bind a card from your drop zone, and your opponent cannot guard with grade 1 or higher cards from his or her hand, which forces them to guard with the trigger. And then at the end of the battle, you put this unit into your soul and you draw a card. So fuels your soul, draws you cards post battle, like I was saying before. Also has guard restrict, so it makes it even harder to guard, on top of everything that we just discussed about guarding. Moving on to our grade 1s, we have 4 Chrono 2 Tigger. Chrono 2 Tigger is probably one of the best grade 1s that Gear Chronicle has in general now, because it just allows you like a straight +1, like for no reason. Especially if you choose to stay on this card multiple turns in a row. It could be very, very good as well if you don't have the cards that you need. Really just helps you get additional cards every single turn. So let's say that you go first. It's Vanguard skill is what we're talking about. So Vanguard skill is at the beginning of your ride phase, you just draw a card. No discard, no nothing, you just draw an extra card. So basically you draw for turn, you draw a card from Chrono Tooth if you're on it. So basically, let's say that you go first, you ride Chrono 2 Tigger, you pass turn to your opponent rides the grade 1. You stay on grade 1 because you don't have a grade 2 or something like that, or you don't have a grade 3 that you need. You can basically just draw 2 cards and then basically just attack, which gets you another card off of drive check, and then your opponent rides a grade 2, and the next turn you draw 2 again. So by that time you should have what you need. If you don't, then you're pretty unlucky at that point. And then even then you'll still have additional shield and additional cards to G-assist should you need them. So Chrono 2 Tigger's first ability is just very, very, very good. Not to mention its second ability, which is when this card is discarded from our hand during our turn, then we can counterblast 1, draw a card, and call this card to rearguard as rest. So this is a straight up +2, because when you would discard this card, it calls itself, which is a +1 to your board, and then you draw a card, which is a +1 to your hand. So overall, just a very, very good card that you should be running at no less than 4. Next up, we have 4 Wedge Move Dragon. We went over the skill of it being discarded as a grade 3, but its Vanguard ability is when its attack hits, you can bind a card from your hand and draw a card. So this is used in the case of not having Chrono 2 Tigger in your hand to ride, but if you do have Chrono 2 Tigger, definitely never ride this card as opposed to this card. It's just a backup. Moving on to our next grade 1, we have 2 Promptly Worker. So Promptly Worker's skill is when placed from hand, put up to 1 card from your drop zone on the bottom of your deck. If you put a grade 3 or greater, you can Soul Blast 2 and draw a card. So this is mainly used to put back our Chrono Tiger Rebellions, because you can go through the deck really fast at times, and you cannot have one in your deck when it's time to do the pseudo stride skill of either Chronofang Tiger or Lost Legend. So you really just want to be able to like put your pieces back, especially because after they get used, they go to the drop zone. So just put back your cards and get a little bit of advantage as well. Then last but not least, we're running 2 Steam Fighter Zabanya or Zabaya. So Zabaya, what it does is activation skill, rearguard circle. When it's on the rearguard circle, during your main phase, you can discard a card from your hand and choose one of your opponent's rearguards and retire it. So the really cool thing about this card is if your opponent, like it's not once per turn, so if your opponent has 5 units, you can discard 5 cards and destroy all their units if you want to. But really this card is just really good and ideal because it allows you to discard how much you want to discard so that you can set yourself up perfectly to do Chronofang Tiger Rebellion skill while also minusing your opponent. You can even discard cards and invoke the cost if your opponent has no rearguards. So just being able to discard for no reason is sometimes useful. But like I said at the very beginning of the video, you don't necessarily want to do that unless you don't want to be discarding cards unless you have a purpose for them, like unless you're guarding or discarding for a skill. You don't really want to be discarding willy-nilly just to get the full effects of Chronofang Tiger, Chrono Tiger Rebellion off faster, or as fast as possible. You really just want to like play through the tempo of the game and wait for your perfect chance to do the full effect and then do the full effect. So moving on to our grade zeros, we have 1 Chrono 2 Tigger. This is just our draw card starter that also gets us a quick shield if our opponent's grade 1 when we happen to ride. And then for our triggers, we run 8 crit, 4 draw, and 4 heal, running 4 Reclaim Key Draco Kid, 2 Ringing Worker, 2 Steam Bomber Jeagle, 4 Steam Guard Kashelia, and 4 Steam Doctor Maltosh. But that has been the deck portion of the video. Let's get right into the games portion of the video. So we're playing against Narukami for the first game. Looks like we're going first, so we draw a card, we ride. Unfortunately, we don't have any of our grade 1 ride targets, but our opponent rides Phoenix and attacks us, gets a front trigger. We ride to grade 2, and then we use the Okabu skill to discard our grade 1. Unfortunately, we don't have another counterblast, so we can't use the grade 1 skill, but we do with our Twin Drive check a crit, and then he guards our remaining attack. He does ride, binding our rearguard with his skill, and then we ride to grade 3. Going to Chronofang Tiger, we discard to go into Rebellion. And we wanted to have it so that we had 3 cards in hand basically, so that we would get the plus 10k, because obviously the -5 card, or sorry, the 5 or less cards wasn't helping here because he does not have a front row. So we do attack and we get rid of our front row because we're playing against Narukami, and I was expecting him to play Vanquisher, but then he G-assists and he actually goes into Stinger. So he gets rid of 2 cards from his hand, goes into Excel 2, and it's really not looking good for him. He attacks with a 14k and attacks with 19. We also no guard that as well. He does get a crit. We take 2 damage. And then right here, we didn't want to like needlessly discard or needlessly minus ourselves, so I basically just like played a little card to put one of our cards back in plus, and then we just attack just so that we can get a damage in while we're waiting to minus him more. So he attempts to use Riki skill the next turn to move our grade 1 up to the front row. However, Riki only moves cards that are in the same column as itself, and it does not affect the center column. So he does attack us for 14, which we guard. He attacks us for 19, which we also guard, and he does heal. And then he attacks us for 14, which we do take. Again, we have a lot of cards in our hand, but this time we determined that we could just go down to like an amount that would be worth it. So we go down to 5 cards in hand. We attack him and we retire his 2 front rows just to minus him a little bit. And we attack him for 33k, or sorry, yeah, 33k, 2 crit. And we go for a triple drive and we do get a crit and he no guards it. So that just ends up being the game because he did not want to block the Vanguard. So even if he did block the Vanguard, you know, obviously we could have gave power here and like crit here or something like that, so that we could attack with Chrono Bite Tiger and then attack with Nabu and it would still be pressure. But I did not expect him to no guard that because usually people are scared to no guard cards that have triple drive at 3 damage. But I guess he just wanted to take the risk and he ends up no guarding and it ends up killing him for it, or he ends up dying for it. So moving into our second game, we're playing against Genesis. Seems to be a Himiko build. So we actually get Chrono 2 Tigger this game. We ride it. He rides Melissa, attacks us, gets no damage. We draw 2, and then we play Ilkabu and our grade 1. We attack, we get a crit. And then he rides Prometheus, Prometheus of Dancing Lights, puts a card on top, and we block it because we thought it was a crit, but it wasn't. So we end up just blocking the other attack too because we want to keep our hand size a little bit down for this matchup. So we do stride into Chrono Tiger Rebellion, and then we choose to discard the Chrono 2 Tigger for the pseudo stride skill. We do check a crit with Nabu, deal him 2 damage, he does heal, and then we draw a card, and then we get another force marker. He goes into Himiko, giving force 1 to his Vanguard circle, and then he proceeds to play Sayohime on the rearguard circle so that he can get that Himiko setup, but also get Sayohime power. And then he uses Kumin to also get that setup for Himiko, and then he uses Himiko to Soul Blast 5, and he chooses to put a draw trigger back so that he can give 10k power and draw 3 cards. So he ends up checking no trigger. He attacks for 23, which we block, and then he attacks for 34, which we don't block. So we again go into Rebellion. We use Chronofang to discard, and then we use Ilkabu skill to counter boss 1 and discard again. So this time we have 1 or less in our hand. So our opponent's guard is less, and then we drive check 4. So basically our opponent, you know, I would say got lucky that we didn't check any triggers. But our opponent rewrites Himiko here, goes for Prometheus of Dancing Lights, goes for the Milky Way, Pleone, I believe it's called. Yeah, Pleone to set up, and then he uses his 3 soul for Melissa, so we actually just end up getting the same cards except for a heal. So he's like, wow, you know, I'm like, you know, why did you do that in my head? Because I didn't think that it was worth it. I don't think I had any units on board that were especially important, but he goes for attacking my rearguard, which is completely fine. We go for stride again, which is, pseudo stride, which is Chrono Tiger Rebellion. We discard a card. We call Chrono 2 Tigger, and we draw a card. And then we choose to use Ilkabu to counter boss 1 and discard 1. And then we're attacking, and it's just 3 cards in our hand, so our front row gets plus 10k. And we also retire his front row. So we get quad drive, we check a crit and a crit and a draw this time, and he actually no guarded my Vanguard because I assumed that he figured out that if he guarded our Vanguard, not only is it quad drive, but like he wouldn't be able to block our rearguard attack should we have chosen to go with the rearguard attack, because we would have just used the guard restrict on Nabu. So he chose to no guard, and then he had to take essentially 3 damage because it was the +1 crit from Chronofang, and then we checked a crit and a draw, and our attack ended up being 60k. So just really, really hard for our opponent to deal with. And then last but not least, we're going into game 3 of Chronofang. So our opponent's actually playing Tsukiyomi. So perfect counter to this deck because it is a protect deck that generates protect 1s very readily, which PGs are this deck's weakness. So you guys will kind of see how it plays out. But we go for our first turn and we ride and we attack him. He goes for the grade 1 Tsukiyomi skill, discarding the 2 so that he can ride it. So he gets a free +1. And then he goes for a Rectangle Magus, getting another +1, while also you know, triggering the top card of his deck. So he attacks again, and we take 2 damage. Then we ride Chronobite, and then we play Nabu, and we play Ilkabu. Ilkabu discards our Quick Shield, and then we attack for 10 to the Vanguard. He does check a crit, and he no guards our Vanguard. We don't check any triggers at all, so that's kind of terrible. And then we attack with Ilkabu to Rectangle Magus. And he was paused because he asked why we had Twin Drive. We explained to him that it's the Ilkabu skill, and then he lets his rearguard go. He draws for turn, uses the skill of Tsukiyomi to get top 5. He adds a card to his hand, and then he discards the grade 3, gets a protect 1. Perfect for him. And then he proceeds to play Ravioli Magus and Tetra Magus, stacking a crit on top of his deck. We no guard the Vanguard because, you know, at this point, like, we should not guard it when we know that there's a crit on top. Thankfully, he didn't check double crit, or we definitely would have died there because our hand is some doo-doo garbage right now. But we stride into Chrono Tiger Rebellion, discarding Chrono Tooth. Then we play Nabu and Wedge Move and Promptly Worker on the rearguard circles. We attack with 2 cards in our hand, which was kind of regrettable because, I mean, it wasn't regrettable, I guess. Like, I was going to say it's regrettable because we didn't use the full, like, caliber of the skill, but he had a PG anyways. He has 3 PGs, actually, so there's no way that we would have killed him in any way, shape, or form right there. But he does take 2 damage. We put Nabu to Soul, we draw a card, and we're going to try to, like, kind of last him out here or grind out his PGs, which is kind of hard when he keeps rewriting Protect cards. So, like I said at the very beginning of the match, like, Protect decks, I think, have a very, very good matchup against Chronofang. Like, just get your PGs for days, and there's not really much that they can do outside of that. But our opponent goes for playing Ravioli Magus again, sets up with another Tetra Magus play, and then goes for playing Goddess of the Half Moon Tsukiyomi on the rearguard circle. He chooses to put Gemini into Soul to countercharge, and then he goes for White Hair and Naba. He does check double trigger here, so Tsukiyomi skill activates, proccing and giving 10k to the front row. So these columns are absolutely massive, and there's no way that I can survive them. Or sorry, there isn't a way. I forgot I survived this turn. So I guarded that, and I had a PG in my hand, so I blocked. And then we, you know, put everything on the line here so that we can attack, and we use Chronofang Tiger's full ability. So we retire his front row, our front row gets 10k, and then we counterblast everything so that he has less to guard with during the turn. So we do check no triggers, so it just ends up being awful all around because he could just take this 38 for free. Not that he wouldn't survive anyways because he did have another PG, like I said, but he basically goes for using Tsukiyomi skill, draws some cards, stacks his deck, puts the rest of the cards on the bottom, and then he plays Hexagonal Magus and Ravioli Magus, and there's absolutely no way that we're surviving that. So we take it, and that ends up being game 3. But that was the future fight for Chronofang Tiger Rebellion. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like on the video and leave a comment down below letting me know your thoughts on the build, or maybe your personal build, or what your favorite thing or least favorite thing about the deck is. Just get some conversation going down there. But also be sure to subscribe down below and click the bell button so you don't have to miss any videos in the future going forward in my future fight. And then also be sure to check out Let's Plays Animes, our second channel in the description below, the brand new combined Twitch, which is LPA Empire, and then also be sure to check out that join button and our social medias down below as well. But with that being said, if you haven't already seen the Chronojet deck, go check that out because that's coming out at the same time as this, so go check that out. But with that being said, this has been Josh from Cardfight Empire, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Peace, guys.